Okay, everybody. Thank you very much for waiting there. Welcome to the middle of the week. If you are joining us for the first time, thank you for giving up part of your Wednesday. This is a lunch break session, and we really appreciate you spending it with us. It will only take 20 to 30 minutes. If you've been on one of these sessions before for our Lunch and Learn, you'll know that this is where we talk about topics in tech. We try and keep it practical, and we try and share thoughts and experiences so that we can all learn something new with the time. The whole thing will take less than half an hour, so thanks for joining us on it. My name's Stephen. In my job, I get to meet business leaders and people in the tech community because I head up the commercial team at Cloud Cover IT here in Glasgow. I'm really excited to be able to share some of my thoughts on tech with you today. This is not going to be a sales pitch. I'm not here to sell anything to you. These are the ideas that I have and that I've built up over time. It's not the company's pitch, it's mine. And I hope that you've got your lunch ready and we're ready to get into it. As we're going along, if you've got any thoughts, ideas, opinions, do pop them into the chat session. We have Emma, who's running the session in the background today. She'll be picking those up and we'll either chat about them at the end of the session or we will come back to you later on and answer any questions that you've got if we don't have an answer here and now. This is the advert bit. It's a word from our sponsors. Cloud Cover IT are based in Glasgow. We're an IT solutions provider, and we provide organizations with managed IT services and support. We've got a help desk team. We've got a field engineer team who support customers across Scotland and occasionally further afield. We do have our own digital transformation team. We create IT solutions almost always in the Microsoft stack. And the focus of that is on increasing productivity and efficiency for clients, developing and delivering planned digital journeys for their business. That's all the advertising you're going to get today, guys. I'm going to move it on to the main topic of the day. I'm going to start by saying what I'm not going to talk about. We've been billing this as trends in tech that are going to affect you in 2023. And if you want to Google this, Google's amazing. Other search engines are available. I love learning and talking about what's happening next in tech, but I'm not the guy who's going to tell you with authority as to how that's going to happen. If you want a technical view on technology, get in touch with us in the chat. We'll send you links to reports like these that are easily findable, and we'll talk about how they might impact on you. I want to take a slightly different view on things. So it's not the top tech trends for 2023. What it is things in and around tech that are actually going to impact you and your business in 2023. We're broadening it out and we're going to talk about things that are happening in the business that I work in, the businesses that I see and talk to. If you stick around to the end, we'll hopefully get talking about some of the things that you can do both to take advantage of the things that are changing and to minimize any downsides of these changes. So it's a very quick view of the top 6 things in tech that are going to impact your business on 2023 from my perspective. So let's get started. And my first topic's really interesting because initially it seems wrong. And then when you think about it, it stops being wrong and it starts being obvious. The digital revolution has already happened. I caught the train home from work yesterday and a conductor came into a very busy carriage and I decided to count how the people around me had paid for their ticket. 17 had paper tickets on a train from the centre of Glasgow. 5 people had a digital ticket that was on their phone and 2 of them, me included, had one of our nice ScotRail not so smart travel cards. So how can I possibly say the digital revolution's over if 70% of people are still using a piece of paper to catch a train? I love that we get to talk about things as being in the last millennium. If you're as old as I am, at least anyway, it's still very much lived experience. And there's a book in 1998 called Being Digital by Nicholas Negroponte. If you haven't read it or you haven't come across it, give it a look. I love the fact that Douglas Adams, who wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and odd Doctor Who episodes, described Nicholas Negroponte as someone who writes about the future with the authority of someone who actually had spent some time there. I think he was probably a bit premature in 1998 to say the digital revolution is over. But if we look at what we actually mean by a revolution, I think there's a lot of justification for this. a lot of you might be familiar with this description of industrial revolutions. The first being when manual power was replaced by steam. The second when the steam factories were replaced by things with electrical power, and the third being when we introduced computing and control to manage our factories. And the fourth being the fourth digital revolution, or fourth industrial revolution we talk about, where we're using data to effectively optimize industry. The reason that I'm talking about this is just to look at the level of upheaval that happens when these transitions happen. But as human beings, we're good at steady, consistent environments, and there aren't that many of us who are real change makers. But all the pieces of the digital revolution, they're in place. The technology that's capable of delivering what we've got, the tools and the dramatic game-changing impacts, they're all here, and they've all been here for a significant period of time. All of the infrastructure is there. So if you look at your business and you see that it's still working on steam, you've got to start looking at those fancy electric motor thingies, because it doesn't work out too well when you get left behind. And I know that I'm not talking entirely to the converted, because 70% of people still have paper train tickets. So I know that the digital revolution, whilst it has happened, there's an awful lot of people getting left behind there. Takes me to my second topic, and it kind of flows through from that. What happened to all the robots? They should have been here by now. I've seen the WALL-E movie, and you know, that was an interesting view on where robots take us. The word robot comes from a Slavic word and was coined in the 1920s. It's robota means servitude or forced labor, and taking robots in that concept is you know, something that we've moved beyond. By the way, this slide is going to tell the difference between anyone in the audience who's over 40 and anyone who's under 40. What are the things that are actually impacting businesses if I haven't got my robot that's clearing up the messy planet? By this, I mean, what are the things that are undertaking repeatable and increasingly complex tasks that ordinarily would have been done by people? Here's a robot that we built. The team at CloudCover built this, and we actually use it ourselves and sell it via the Microsoft Teams store. We built it to address a problem. How can we gauge the morale and how a team is feeling when it's a hybrid or a remote working team? So we use anonymous feedback that's generated and given by automated prompts. In this case, the whole thing sits inside Microsoft Teams, and it allows your team to see how people are feeling in their work from day to day. And if any of you are worried, I've filled mine in today. So yeah, I'm very happy. This is all going well. 88% of organizations are planning to adopt some level of robotic automation into their infrastructure, and there are approximately 2.7 million industrial robots in use around the world today. Yet the final point is the robots are coming, both the kinetic ones and the virtual ones. And they're going to have an impact on your business, and a positive one that allows you to bring efficiencies and have people doing far more meaningful work, and automating the things that are less meaningful or certainly more repeatable. So coming on to my third point, data is too big. Big, huge, terrifying, scary data. About a year ago, CloudCover set up a partnership with a Danish company called Time Extender, and they've built a system for building and managing data lakes. If either data lakes are your thing or you've no idea what a data lake is, drop me a note in the messages. We can have a chat about that outside of a session that's limited to only about half an hour. My view was then, and now it still is, very simple. Most businesses have too much data. The data they have is in too many places, and it's become a problem. And sometimes it's a problem that's too big to tackle. It's like the garage of a house that you've lived in for the last decade, and you're getting ready for a move. It has just built up over time, and you've no idea where to start. And I don't know if you've all clocked the numbers there in the slides. 90% of all data was created in the last 2 years. I don't think I need to say much more about that. What I do want to say around data is what if your data could be an asset, not a liability, and could generate opportunities and not just be a cost of storage every month for what you've got sitting there. And that's what businesses need to do in 2023. You've got to clear the garage out. I want to thank Colin Green, who is on LinkedIn and just happened to have posted this graphic at exactly the time I was preparing this. And I think it's a lovely way of visualizing what well-organized data management can bring to a business. I think a lot of us will resonate with that image in the top left-hand corner there. So because these lunch and learns run at quite a pace, I'm going to move on to the biggest point I want to make today. This is elephants in the room, it's heads in the sand. And please don't drop off the call here or stop watching the YouTube clip if you're watching this later on. I want you to sit and think of a number, and thank you to my colleague Tris who pointed this out to me. I want you to think about the available bank balance on the current account of your business as it is today, and I want you to double that number. Got it? Okay, you can't access anything in your business at all. This is the only thing you're going to see on any screen until you take that number you're thinking of, turn it into Bitcoin, and send it to whoever just encrypted the entire data system and all the systems of your company. We all can be very good at trying to ignore the reality of this, but actually when you see it happen, it's terrifying. Earlier this year, the guys at VM published the results of a big independent research project into the data and data protection industry. There are about 3,500 countries, organizations that contributed from about 28 countries. Of those companies that replied, only 24% didn't have some degree of attack by ransomware, or they weren't aware of any attack. And 16% were attacked once in 2021. The reality is that organizations are constantly having phishing attacks and increasingly sophisticated attacks. You can now buy cybercrime as a service if you are so intended. And all organizations are reporting a degree of both vulnerability and awareness of the fact that these attacks are happening. And these are serious questions. If your company or your individual data, for that matter, has not been attacked, it's a question of when. When we chat to companies, some of whom are preemptively looking at measures, some of which have unfortunately had problems, culture is the biggest indicator of vulnerability. Please don't ignore this. We've seen what happens, and it is worth taking a significant effort to reduce your risk. I've picked up 4 points here. There are more, but do have a look at the Cyber Essentials certification. Talk to the business resilience team if you're based in Scotland. Do deploy multi-factor authentication across your team, and have and test and make sure that your backups are fit for purpose. But most importantly, talk to your team, have employee education in place. If you've recently had some degree of capital event, maybe some press coverage, an investor, or a big contract that you've won, you're at higher risk of a sophisticated attack. I'm going to stop talking about it there because it's not a topic that we want to address head on, but I am pushing it head on. Take time to look at your cybersecurity. If you're not sure where to look at next, talk to someone you trust about it. By all means, come to the CloudCover team, but go to where you think you're going to get the best advice. And this is the home straight. We're sort of just over 15 minutes in. Yeah, my point 5 and point 6 sort of overlap. It's like the Harry Potter movies. I made 2 out of the last one. My final point here is allied to tech, but it's a point that I think is very important to all of us and has an impact for all of us. You saw I was talking about robots earlier on, and how we built a robot that simply asks our team how they are and in an anonymous way aggregates that information. And I'm absolutely not a psychologist. That's a really good thing for the psychology profession. But we can all see that everyone's been through a tough time. and people are seeking change. And one of the impacts on businesses is the sheer number of people who are either changing jobs or planning to change jobs or completely mixing their life up and doing something different with it. We've been through a tough time. Businesses have seen huge changes, and we know we've got much more coming. People are struggling on lots of fronts. Businesses are struggling on lots of fronts, but also people are taking the opportunity. And it sounds obvious, but the most important point is that we can be more kind to each other. Technology so often brings out the worst in lots of us. It gives us a degree of separation, but it can also enable the best of us. And I don't have the answer to this, but I'm very keen to push this discussion forward. And if people want to pick up on this idea of where technology interfaces with well-being and people at work and how that's impacting on change, then let's do that. And I'm going to sort of kick that off with just one area that might seem a bit counterintuitive. And it's something that I do. I think we've all moved to a very on-screen life over the last 3 years. From a personal point of view, predominantly I've communicated not just with colleagues, but with friends, my parents and my kids through a screen. Even when I do go to a live event, I feel far more drained than I did before. If I go to a networking meeting, you come out of it not feeling the way you used to do. We've sort of stepped away from that personal interaction. So one of the things that I do with technology is I make a very conscious decision about when I'm not going to use technology. Anyone who's around the CloudCover office will know that all too often I'll pick up a pen and paper and I will turn the screen off. It's something that I do very consciously and for periods of concentrated work, for solving problems, for planning. The computer, the phone, the iPad get turned off entirely, and then I do my work separately from the computer screen, turning the screen off. One of the things that I do, it's a technology change that's a little bit counterintuitive, but it works for me. So we were supposed to be looking at the 5 top trends for 2023. In fact, the team had prepared a presentation for me. I've just gone a bit rogue and talked about the things that I felt mattered to me and mattered to the businesses that I've been talking to. So the things that we were supposed to be talking about were the expansion of the Internet of Things, the increased need for cybersecurity. Well, I did get into that one. Sustainability in tech. It's a topic that I'm very passionate about. Low-code technologies and how they're changing how businesses work, and the introduction of artificial intelligence. Everyone will have seen the flurry of media activity about artificial intelligence tools that are taking off. If you want to talk about any of those, drop us a note in the comments. We'll get in touch, and we're very happy to do that. But as a reminder of what we actually talked about, and they're kind of the topics that I think at a broader level are so important to our businesses. The digital revolution is over, and if you are not feeling on board and like technology is an enabler for your business, you need to move into that space. The robots are still coming and they're making a change. My data, certainly your data, everybody's data, I think is probably a bit too big, and it doesn't have to be. Cyber attacks, it's a matter of when and not if, and the level of threat that they represent means that please don't ignore them. And finally, I talked about well-being not being an option. It's being something that's very, very important, and that I personally look at when not to use a screen. I hope that's been an interesting little run through. We've kept it almost exactly to the 20 minutes that we said we would. I'm going to just ask Emma and Owen, who are there in the background, if there are any questions that have come in.
Thank you very much, Steve. We have had a couple come in. I'm conscious of everybody's time, but we're certainly keen to get a couple of these just now, Steve. One that did come in was around the cybersecurity piece and the risk and the ever increasing risk of cyber attack. And the question was, can you ever remove the risk of cyber attack completely?
Not practically. I think all organizations, there are people who know much more about this topic than I do, but all organizations recognize that there is a real world threat. And when big mega corporations still have challenges, either because of a denial of service attack or something bigger and more sustained, we running typical small and medium-sized businesses up to smaller enterprise businesses cannot be immune from it. You can't remove it. What you can do is reduce the risk of falling susceptible to it, or at least falling to it having a major impact. You can plan for recovery for it, and you can certainly train your people to recognize it, to know what to do if they feel that something isn't right. We as a business have undergone the ISO 27001 standard as a significant piece of work earlier this year. I think that fundamentally changed how we operated our business for the better, and I would recommend that to anyone who wants to do it. I think you can reduce, you can never remove.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve. Another really good question. It kind of linked in, I guess, to, I'm not sure if the question was derived from you showing Gadget, the app on the screen, or your conversation around well-being, Steve. But the note here was, we think we do well-being very well in our organisation, but how do we really know? Is your tool able to show trends? So I thought it was a really interesting note.
No, and I think trends and benchmarks are so important in this space, and certainly the team behind the Gadget app have put a huge amount of time into making usable management tools whilst still protecting individual anonymity and making sure that people feel comfortable with it. So the answer is yes, the tool that we have has trends, and I would suggest that whoever's dropped that question in, let's have a separate chat, and let's bring that question up on a one-to-one basis. We can show you the tool and you can have a look at what we've got there.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve.
Any other questions?
Conscious of time, so we'll finish on this one, and it's quite an open-ended one. So feel free to action as you will. What impact do you think the economic position, I'm guessing, just the ongoing chat around UK economy, will have or impact technology in 2023?
Okay, so I've got a fairly strong position on recessions, and I'm not pro-recession in any way. But if you live and work inside a smaller business, I've run sales teams through 3 recessions now. Even if 7 or 8% of the market goes, you've got 92% of it left to go for. Change is opportunity, but it does pull challenges back. I would say that what is happening in environments where businesses they're pulling purse strings together is that technology is part of the answer to that. It provides an opportunity to generate efficiencies, to look fundamentally at how we operate and to make things operate better, to provide a more competitive platform to do it from. So whilst I am not encouraging of recessions happening, I love being in a growth environment. I would say that if you are running a small or a medium-sized business right now, these things also have opportunity, and technology is part of that opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve.
I would like to thank everyone who's managed to stay on through me chatting away for this length of time. Can I flag, if anyone is on the chat today who's from Glasgow, we have another session which is running tomorrow, where we're actually meeting with Andrew Dobby from Made Brave to talk about his technology journey. And if you have a look at our social media, or perhaps Emma can pop a link into the chat, there are a couple of seats left for tickets to be sold for that live event at our office in Bridgeton, if you'd like to come along and meet us in the flesh.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Steve. And echoing you, Steve, thank you everybody who had the time to join us today. We'll bring a close to this session here. And if there are any questions that we've not addressed here, anybody does want to pick up on conversation, any of the points that Steve has mentioned today, please reach out to us and we'd be delighted to have a further chat.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Eric. Goodbye.